Today we're going to discuss farmers and the expansion westward. Before expansion, you had two primary groups of people wanting to move westward. The first were southern immigrants. These were immigrants that had been competing with larger farms and found it to be too difficult, so they moved to the west. Immigrants also were able to settle in the west, but only those with money, primarily those of German heritage. The west provided a second chance, a place to restart. That's why you would see poorer people. They felt that if they couldn't succeed on the east, they would move to the west. However, prior to expansion, life was still difficult. It'll become more so afterwards, but it was still a second chance for people. So, there was a lot of legislation passed before and after expansion to benefit the West. So the Homestead Act of 1862 was one of the first pieces of legislation. It gave 160 acres of public land to anyone who was able to go and work it for a certain number of years. This allowed people to basically get the farms for free. However, it turned out to be a problem because it was mainly over speculators that were getting the greatest land, where the actual farmers were getting less nutrient soil. The Pacific Railroad Act of 1862 was also something that benefited the West. It basically promoted railroad construction throughout the whole country, and it allowed for transportation of the goods farmers made. The Dawes Act of 1887 was similar to the Homestead Act in the sense that it gave farmers more land, but it took it away from the natives. So it was speculators again who were getting the choicest parts of the land, whereas the natives were getting less. The Interstate Commerce Act of 1887 was basically an act that said railroads had to be reasonable and just. This was due to the fact that they were choosing their prices for different customers, thereby eliminating competition within it. This didn't really help at the time because it wasn't enforced, but eventually it'll come to become an important piece. The McKinley Tariff was also really important because it increased the tax on imports, thereby decreasing exports. So the journey west was really difficult to begin with. Many of these farmers had to sell anything that they left behind, and or they had to leave things behind. The journey was rigorous in itself. There were Indian attacks, although minor, it did occur. And also, rivers were dangerous terrain. You could have broken wagons, you could have injuries with your horses, and diseases were widespread. Some of the main ones were cholera, smallpox, typhoid, and scurry. There was no medicine, so you could die from even the smallest wounds. There were no antibiotics, there was nothing. A cut could even kill you. Moreover, resources could be really expensive. Because you were only buying from a single person, monopolies were easy to institute. Now, the main and most popular name within farmers is William Jennings Bryan. He's most known as a member of the Populist Party and for delivering his Cross of Gold speech. His Cross of Gold speech focused on bimetallism and the common man. He was a champion of farmers, but more so than that, he actually ran for president and was successful in getting the nomination of the Democratic Party. However, when big money saw his plans, they funded his opponent William McKinley and led to his run for presidency being forgotten. Now, when farmers got to the West, their daily life wasn't easy. They had to work hard, because if they didn't, then they wouldn't get anything to sell, thereby losing any economic prosperity that could have been developed in the West. They would live in homes made of silt and mud, anything that they could find in a flat plain. They had to grow a lot of food, and many times they didn't have technology because the food that they would sell wouldn't make them a lot of money. They also had to take care of their animals. They would use everything from the animals, including the dung which they would burn for heat. The conditions there were unhygienic, and it would also be a breeding place for diseases. More so, farmers were always in debt, which harmed them just as much as living in the East did. Now, the effects of more farmers in the West exacerbated the already harmful or the toxic environment. You would have constant boom and bust cycles where you would have a lot of speculation into a specific thing and it would become really, really expensive and prominent, and almost immediately it would become worthless and bust. There was an increase in food production though because there were more farmers. There was soil butchery and there was destruction of native land. And then there was more animosity towards the rich due to growing class divides. In conclusion, farmers always had hard lives. Farmers were mainly in debt. Expansion wasn't all that they had hoped it would be. And increasing difficulty did eventually lead to change.